Chapter 4.7, we skipped over 4.6 because 4.5 and 4.7 actually work together, and since we are doing 2 lessons per week, I figured let's knock out the completing the square stuff first and then go to the other stuff that's in this unit. Our last lesson covered the general format of completing the square. Today we will use the process of completing the square to improve our understanding of parabolas. If you're looking at this equation, let's think about what we know to find the vertex, axis of symmetry, and maximum value. I remember that what we had to do was go x equals negative b over 2a. Hopefully you know that formula, which would be opposite of 10, which is 10. Opposite of negative 10, which is 10, and 2 times 1, which is 5, which means my key x is 2. I would then have to take that 2 and plug it in. Do I have my calculators? Yes, I do. So I would then take my parentheses 2 squared minus 10 times 2 plus 7 and get negative 9. And that is my vertex. The axis of symmetry obviously is x equals 2. And because, again, some of you aren't realizing what's going on, this x squared is positive. Positive means happy. Negative means sad. So because this is positive and happy, that means that we have a minimum of y equals negative 9. So that would be the 3 things that we're looking at right there. Alright. So if we were to take this part here, though, same equation, just to prove it, there's no magic going on. If we were to take that thing and complete the square on that equation, we would put y equals parentheses x squared minus 10x plus blank plus 7 minus blank. And we would put y equals x minus 5, because remember we cut that number in half, squared, which makes 25 here, which makes 25 here. Did I do something stupid? I have to have done something stupid. B over 2a is... I'm silly. My mistake was up here. Let me go back. I seem to be on a roll because I just did the other video just now. 2 times a would be 2, which makes this 5, which makes that 5, which then makes me go back and using recall, which again is a very powerful tool, to change that into 5s and get negative 18, and x equals 5 and y equals negative 18. Anyway, now that we come down here, again, this is good that I did that because 7 minus 25 is negative 18. And if you want to know why I knew that I was wrong, because if you look at the 2 numbers in the second equation, the values in the second equation should correspond with the vertex of the first equation. Notice that my vertex is 5, negative 18. Notice here, remember that we usually switch the inside number, so positive 5, negative 18 because that's on the outside, and that is why we call this the vertex form, because whenever you complete the square on a quadratic equation, if possible, it's not always nice to do, but it is called vertex form because it exposes the vertex of your parabola. Each form has its strengths, but it's important to understand how to translate both directions. So just like we just turned this format, which is standard form, into vertex form, we are also going to need for this section and on your test to be able to go from vertex form to standard form, which means that what you would do first is y equals x plus 3 minus 13, x squared, 3x, 9. Again, don't forget that's from doing the distributive property, which makes this to be x squared 6x minus 4 would be your standard form. So again, you want to be able to go from vertex form to standard form, but you should also know as of today how to go from standard form to vertex form, which is the key idea of what we are doing. In order to rewrite equations in vertex form, we must also take another step in our experience with completing the square. Yesterday I gave you very basic questions, and I'm pretty sure your homework was also very basic, but it's not always that easy because sometimes there's a number attached. So let's look at how we move forward with this. The first thing we want to do whenever we turn this into vertex form is, yes, we know we're going to separate this, but I also want to take the number off of the x. So what I end up doing is factoring off the 5 from these two numbers. So I end up with x squared minus 12x. Again, hopefully you know where I got the 12. 60 divided by 5 is 12. And then I'm going to add a blank, and I'm going to put plus 4, and then I'm just going to put a blank because I don't always, actually I do know. If I'm going to add a positive number here, and this is where we have to be able to forecast, if I'm going to add a number here and multiply it by 5, it will still be a positive number, which means I will have to subtract that value. Other than that, I go down here, I keep my 5, I put my x minus 6, that stays the same. 6 squared still turns into 36, but what you have to consider in this new format that we just are looking at is that 36 is getting multiplied by 5 to make 150 plus 30, so 180 I believe. Which means that I didn't just add a 36, I actually added 180, so I have to offset that by subtracting 180, which makes this minus 176. So again, whenever there's a number outside, you must factor that number off first, just out of the front two numbers. And whenever you go to add that value, you must remember to multiply it by that number before offsetting what you just did. Because that is not a 36, that's actually a 36 times 5, which is 180, so we offset it by subtracting 180. Difficult versions, which I'm going to guarantee you're going to see on your quiz, is the one with the negative. So again, what we do is we pull off the negative 4. But you have to be careful because you're dividing by negative 4, which means that should become plus 6. I'm sorry, x squared plus 6x. And again, we are going to add a blank. But again, this is why it's difficult. I'm going to add a number here which would be positive. That number will get multiplied by a negative, which means that we're actually going to be adding a negative value. So to offset it, we must add a positive value. So that's where you have to make sure you pay attention. Other than that, we do the same thing. Negative 4x plus 3 squared, again, because you cut that number in half. 3 turns into 9. 9 is getting multiplied by negative 4 to make negative 36, which means I want to add a positive 36, which means I would put plus 41 as my answer. I believe the work you have is going to give you a format to fill in, so just make sure you practice that. And again, if you get stuck, show me a picture of what you put into your boxes, and I will gladly look at it and try to help you figure out where you messed up. But again, it's a very straightforward thing. You just have to make sure you're ready to go that direction. And the last one, of course, some of you can kind of visualize what's wrong with this already. Looks very simple because it doesn't have anything attached to x, but your challenge here is that this is a 9. And so we have to do x minus, when you divide a number by 2, you simply put that number over 2. You don't have to be quiet. They don't see you. Anyway, when you put that number over 2, now we have to square that number, which means we end up with 81 over 4 because you have to square both of those numbers. Again, cutting that in half is the same as putting 9 over 2 if you want proof. Look at this 12. What is 12 over 2? 12 divided by 2 is 6. What would 6 over 2 be? 3. So you're doing it, but you just got to leave it in the fraction form. So again, when you cut a odd number in half, just put that number over 2. Make sure when you square that number to square both of those numbers, and then we just have to do this. I'm going to do this without a calculator, at least for the most part. To show you, again, I'm going to add a whole number to something over 4. That means I need this number to be over 4. 13 times 4, I believe, is 52. And so that's what I would end up with. So 52 minus 81 would be 929, I believe. So it's going to be negative 29 over 4. And just to verify, 13 minus 81 over 4, which is why these calculators are so good, negative 29 over 4, which is our answer. And yes, there will be one of those on your homeworks. So just make sure you're ready for that when it pops up. Again, be sure to follow your notes. The process itself is pretty straightforward, but you must be sure to learn how to deal with the subtleties that are hidden within the more challenging problems that exist. Again, just be sure to communicate when you have issues. Send me a picture of your work. Send me a picture of your computer, whatever you need, and I will be glad to talk you through it because that's really where we are right now. As we're getting into the more specific versions of Algebra 2 and the higher levels of what's going on, in all honesty, all you'll need is a conversation sometime just to kind of get you back on track. So don't feel ashamed to use me. That's what I'm here for, and that's what I want to do. So good luck. Have a good day.